Welcome to WeAreSC. This is Erik McKinney, joined by Greg Katz. Greg, we've got Pac-12 championship on Friday night, and it's USC Washington. No, wait, it's USC Oregon. As the Ducks fill in for Washington, USC got that news after about a day of prep for Washington, had to flip over and now take on Oregon. And the coaches have said, not a huge deal in terms of the prep time loss, but boy, it's odd for USC. They're coming off back-to-back short weeks where you had a Friday game involved, sorry, a Saturday game involved, a Sunday game involved, now a Friday game involved, and changing opponents at the end of this season. It feels like you're just trying to hold on and land the plane at the end of the year. But I think at this point, everybody excited to see USC Oregon on Friday night.
Well, I think the reality is USC and Oregon was the preseason pick all along. And I'll even say, from my perspective, that this is going to be a more challenging and difficult opponent than Washington would have been. And remember, the last time Oregon came to the Coliseum last year, it was 56-24, and it wasn't pretty. Now, granted, Oregon doesn't have, Justin Herbert at quarterback, and they're missing some other people we'll talk about later. But, this is going to be a test for USC. How much of Oregon is in their head from last year? This seems to be a different SC team. They seem to be very competitive. And so they're going to have to shake whatever they felt last year and really concentrate on the task at hand.
I will tell you this, the biggest difference to me between last year's team and this year's team might have to do with that Oregon game last year. When Oregon returns that kickoff for a touchdown, it felt like the USC team just fell apart and could not come back from it. This team, not saying the same kind of kickoff return is going to happen, but this team, if that does happen, if something like that does happen, it feels like they could regroup and bounce back. And they've shown, 3 times now this year that they can do that. And I think that's important against the team like Oregon, that again, it's not the Oregon team that people expected coming into the season. But offensively, they still have pieces. Defensively, they still have guys, and they're still a team that could get rolling the way USC's offense can kind of roll people over when it's really clicking. And I think that mentality that we've seen from USC this year, the ability again to stop momentum, negative momentum, and pick it up. I think that'll be big against Oregon, especially being able to kind of play at home in a comfortable setting.
Well, let's not kid ourselves. Oregon is very talented. Okay. They've had some big recruiting classes. They had one today, signing day. So they're not hurting. It's their philosophy. It's their Mario Cristobal wants physical football, both sides of the line of scrimmage. And that to me is a real key. It's their mentality. Uh, they have good players on offense, good players on defense, stars on defense in some areas. They were hurt a little bit by people opting out to play in the secondary. But believe me, the Trojans are going to have their hands full. And let's not forget that the Trojans are the underdog in this game.
Yeah, I usually kind of kick off our look at the matchup with USC's offense. I'm going to go to the other side because I think USC's defense and how they perform against Oregon is going to be critical. What we saw against UCLA came out. They formation them. They gave them interesting looks. They went up tempo, and down tempo. They kind of did everything against this USC defense to make them think constantly, and it's where's your assignment, where's your alignment, what's the tempo going, how long can you look at the sideline, how do you get lined up. They did all of that and they caught USC a lot. Oregon has the ability to be kind of the master's class at that. I mean, I think that they probably can do it better than UCLA and probably have better offensive personnel to do it. I think that's going to be a key. Just USC getting focused, getting lined up, and being able to kind of handle their responsibilities against an Oregon team that there's misdirection. There's guys running around all over the place. That there's RPO with the quarterback. He'll keep it. He'll throw it. He'll keep it and then throw it. I mean, it's kind of some of everything for when you line up against Oregon.
Well, it starts off at quarterback with Tyler Shuck. So let's make clear it's Shuck. Pronounce it Shuck. It doesn't look that way, but that's what it is. This is a kid out of Arizona who's a true dual threat quarterback. If you thought that Dorian Thompson Robinson was, a difficult task for USC, this kid, when he gets hot, he can really be tough. He's averaging 250 yards a game through the air, 50 yards rushing. Okay. That tells you he can do it. I've watched him on TV a number of times. He's either really good or he seems to get into a funk. And of course, it's going to be SC's job to get him into a funk, but he can run. He's not a small person. And I was impressed by him. He's the type of dual threat quarterback. And, the thing to keep in mind was what I like about the SC defense is they're aggressive. They played extremely hard and they hit. That being said, UCLA moved the ball on them. UCLA had almost 500 yards or so in offense. And I have to think that honestly, that Oregon is capable of doing that. And the thing about this Oregon team is they're really fast. They don't have a Demetric Felton, but in the running backs they have in CJ Verdell and Travis Dye, they can hurt you. Now they didn't hurt SC last year on the ground. They had limited amount of yardage, but they did get to the Trojans on receptions. Okay. And that's maybe a key to look at if things aren't moving. Okay. And I also think that when it comes to Oregon, where their biggest change was, aside from losing a number one draft pick quarterback, small task, they have a rebuilt offensive line. Okay. That was a very veteran team last year up front. However, Cristobal has got a system. He's got a system for the weight room, the type of offensive lineman that he wants. Remember, Mario Cristobal was an offensive lineman himself in college, and a good one. He was the offensive line coach for Nick Saban at Alabama. So he knows, offensive linemen. So anybody who says, well, they're kind of having a rebuild, I said, no, I think they're reloading. They're not perfect, but they play the brand of ball that Cristobal wants to see.
And they've got three guys, and that includes the quarterback, Tyler Shuck, three guys that have rushed for more than 250 yards this year, and they spread the ball around more than UCLA did. I think with UCLA, you had, three guys, maybe two guys, really, the tight end, the running back that you had to key on. Oregon can do it with more. Jalen Redd, the receiver, and former Trojan Devin Williams, the wide receiver. That's going to be an interesting, I think, matchup to watch, him coming back to the Coliseum to take on his former Trojan teammates. And then you mentioned the running backs. The big thing with, Penei Sewell is not there. He's going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft at left tackle. That opens them up, I think, again, on that offensive line, that rebuild offensive line. But it's also an offensive line with 5 games under its belt now. So you assume as USC kind of continues to progress and get better, that Oregon is too. Now, Oregon has lost the last 2 games it's played to Oregon State and Cal, but they've been off for a week. They've been able to regroup. They know they've been focused on USC for basically that entire time. So that will be interesting, kind of the rest there against a not beat up, but a USC team, again, that's played 2 games on back-to-back short weeks or will. So I think that'll be interesting for USC. I'm going to ask you kind of your key matchup or key player here in a bit, but mine, Talanoa Hufanga. He is playing out of his mind right now, and we were able to talk to him this week. He's got a little glint, a little gleam in his eye, being able to finally play against an Oregon team. He came to USC out of Oregon, and he said he hasn't been able to play against Oregon or Oregon State during his career at USC. This will be the first time. I think he is kind of a key. Again, I mentioned kind of getting lined up and making plays. I think he's got to make maybe some special plays against Oregon, not to win the game, but to keep SC sort of comfortable defensively.
Well, my key would be turnovers. SC not giving up any and getting them from Oregon. It's really critical because, this is a game, at least from an SC offensive point of view, I don't think they're going to run the ball with authority. Okay. But when I see Kevon Thibodeau rushing off the edge, and I see some of the others that they have there, it's really going to put a lot of pressure on the FC offensive line to keep Slovis upright. But I think if they do, and Slovis plays a good Slovis game, the Trojans can definitely do it. But it's going to be, I'll use one of Graham Harrell's things. We're going to do what we do, and it's all about execution, and we'll just do it better. And I think that's really important. I think that, somehow Shuck is going to, he has thrown interceptions, so he's not perfect, as we said. And so those type of turnovers is going to be important. And what's also important, remember, there's no crowd in the Coliseum. I don't think that's going to be an issue because, these guys are competitive athletes. You put them at the ping pong table, they want to win. Okay. Put them in the, checkers, they want to win. You put them in that football game, they won't notice a crowd's not there because they'll be so focused on wanting to win. Now, the thing to keep in mind historically is if Oregon did win this game, they would have more wins in the Pac-12 championship than any program in the Pac-12. They would be 4-0. USC, on the other hand, is 1-1. If you kind of a brief history lesson, 2015, the Trojans lost to Stanford 41-22, and that was the Christian McCaffrey game that let the rest of the country know that this guy was the best player in the country. That didn't win the Heisman Trophy, which was ridiculous. And then in 2017, the credit to Clay Helton and his staff and his team, they came back and beat Stanford 31-28, and Sam Darnold goes for 2 TDs. And I think the thing that stood out in that game, SC had a tremendous goal line stand in the fourth quarter, which turned out to be, in the end, a 99-yard winning drive. So Trojans are 1-1. But, whenever you got a championship on the line, it should be fascinating. It should be fun. It should be hard hitting. I'm interested to see, believe it or not, who are the officials for this game? Who are the referees going to be?
It's always
Because we know that the
interesting one.
Yeah, especially in the Pac-12.
Yeah. So let's talk a little SC offense. You talked about turnovers, but that matchup, Oregon's defense has not been special this year. And whether you want to say it's the season or they did have, maybe their 3 best defensive backs in Javon Holland, Thomas Graham, and Brady Breeze, they all opted out. And I mean, I can't imagine USC losing Talanoa Hufanga and Isaiah Poldmau and Elijah Griffin or Chris Steele for this season and having to play like that. But Oregon still has some defensive backs. But when you look at kind of what has made Oregon's defense really good over the last few years, it's not there. It's 8 sacks through 5 games, which is not a lot, and it's only 2 interceptions again through 5 games. So they have not made that big play, and they have gotten absolutely gashed on the ground. UCLA ran all over them. Oregon State ran all over them. But that's not a recipe for success for USC. I'm curious your thoughts on kind of how that matches up. And at this point, I'm not even going to ask you, does USC try to pound the ball against them, or are they able to sort of take advantage of Oregon's weak rushing numbers?
Well, I think you set the table well enough. I mean, when I looked at the conference standings for rushing and rush defense, and I think Oregon's got stars, but they don't have an elite team. I think they're 8th in the conference in total defense, something like that. So they're not exactly, the second coming of the Ducks of the past. But, they do have a great true freshman inside linebacker in Noah Sewell, who is the brother of Penny Sewell, who was the Outland Trophy winner last year. True freshman, plays with just angry intentions. And, Kevon Thibodeau, he had 4 tackles last year against the Trojans and a sack. So we know he's good. And then another outside linebacker, Isaac Slade Matuama, or whatever how you pronounce it. My apologies to his family and friends. He's also good. But the question is going to come down again to Graham Harrell. And we don't know the status right now, at least I haven't heard, Favai Malapei, whether he's going to play or not.
So the latest is that he is extremely doubtful to completely out for the game. There isn't a whole lot of hope that he'll be there. And Clay Helton said today, again, sort of teeing you back up to talk running game. He thinks Marquise Stepp is sort of right there, ready to bust out, ready to break loose. And he's talked a couple times now this week about, maybe them needing to rely on him more for this game. And he obviously came into the season still a little dinged up from last year, the ankle injury. Then he's had some foot issues, and we saw him early in the season and then just absent the last couple of games. But I think it's still, you still think it might be on the way. And so again, the way Oregon's kind of been beaten up straight up the middle, boy, it feels like a game that maybe he could get going. I don't know. You can't, at this point, you just can't trust that. Yeah, let's give him the ball 15 times. Let's give him the ball 20 times. I would be very curious to see that, and I think that, maybe the USC offensive line would, would be curious to see what they could do against this Oregon defense with that.
Well, I think it's a curious situation. Now, Pei ran so hard against UCLA and was so effective that he sets the bar for the other running backs. The question I have is, what happened to Stephen Carr? Is he not going to be the starter? It would almost seem like you got to start him just for his own peace of mind to get him into the game. If Stepp gets more carries, the balance of the game. And how much is Keenan Kristen going to play? He's a possibility. But I will say this: in order to hit a home run, you have to go to bat. In order to run the ball, you have to call running plays. And I think, well, I don't think, I just tell it like it is. I don't think Graham Harrell is real excited about running the ball under any circumstances unless he has to. He'll tell you, as long as Keaton Slovis throws, for 400 yards and 7 touchdowns and whatever, we're just fine. But the problem is, it's pretty common knowledge that the real weakness of Oregon is their ability to consistently stop the run. And if you know that and you don't go after that, in my lexicon, you're playing defense on yourself. And I think that's a real problem. And to get Stepp into the game, if he's going to be the guy, he's got to get enough carries to get into a rhythm.
And they've got to let their running backs actually get 2 yards of space to when they get the ball. I mean, that's going to be a key too. I think what's going to be interesting is Oregon has always, and this is with USC cornerback coach Dante Williams having been up there and coaching those corners, they've been real confident in their corners to be able to hold up and play some man coverage and do that. I mentioned the guys who are out right now for Oregon that did not play this season. I will be curious how much faith they have in those guys if they want to do kind of what Washington State did and throw more guys up, in that front 7 to try to stop the run and let those guys be on an island. Again, there's some talent back there in that Oregon secondary. I don't think there's a secondary in the Pac-12 that can hang with the USC wide receivers. So I think that sort of game is going to be interesting. UCLA, they sort of flip back and forth, some man, some zone. And boy, when they played man, they got burned. And so I'll be curious kind of how, maybe the word is stubborn, but how Oregon plays that and how much they go to that deep drop zone and how much they let their guys play man. But that, I think, is a key because they were able to really kind of throw Keaton Slovis off, I think, as the game went along last year. He threw some big interceptions, one return for a touchdown, and they just, USC could not kind of find their way back into it after that Oregon defense kind of figured some things out early.
Well, I think it goes back to what I believed earlier and said it's going to come down to turnovers. It's going to also come down to coaching adjustments. I think that Oregon will be absolutely out of their ducking mind if they play man to man. I don't know why you would even say, well, let's do something a little different. SC's talent is so talented at wide receiver, and Slovis can find him, that all he has to do is find him 2 or 3 times in man, and they're going to get burned badly. I think that's the worst kept secret in the conference. So we'll see. we'll see what coaching staff makes the adjustments. That is something that we'll have to find out. That'll be a big key in the game, I believe.
And so let's wrap this up. You're, not necessarily a score, but at the end of the game, who's there holding up the Pac-12 trophy?
I'm going to say USC because I think USC wants it that bad. I think they felt it. You could see it in their eyes. I'm not saying that Oregon doesn't want it, but I think there's something about this team, and I totally agree with Clay Helton. This can be a special team. It doesn't have to be the 72 Trojans. It doesn't have to be a Pete Carroll 2004 team, but this team can do what it's been doing, living on the edge, but winning close games. And they say good teams win close games. I don't care who you're playing. If you can come back like they've done, I'm sure Oregon has been told a million times, this team will not die until the clock ends. And that's, to me, a major, major thing plus for USC. So when it's all said and done, I think SC will win in a close game.
Yeah, I'm with you. You talk about kind of special teams, and again, you're not comparing them to the undefeated, 12-0, 13-0, 14-0 USC teams of the past, but this team has been fun. This team has been really fun to watch. And yes, it's frustrating, but it's kind of like watching your kids grow up, where it's just kind of like, why would you do that early on? And then they kind of figure it out, and you love them at the end of the games. And I think that they are fired up to play Oregon. Again, they would have been fired up to play Washington. There's something else, I think, about getting Oregon, and they know a lot of these guys, and Oregon has sort of jumped them in terms of kind of being the recruiting power in the Pac-12 the last couple of years. And I think if USC players, certainly at the beginning of the year, but even this week, if you ask them one by one, who do you want to play from the North? I got to imagine that Oregon is the overwhelming answer. So that will be kind of a fascinating aspect of that kind of continued rivalry between these two teams, when it looked like maybe we wouldn't get a matchup between them this year, when the regular season meeting was canceled early, and then it looked like it'd be Washington in the championship game. So again, a good, even though it's a weird end again to the season, a weird end to a weird season, but I think we're all kind of pleased to be able to see this matchup on the field and see if this USC team can kind of continue what they've done through the year. The team, I guess individually they have not been perfect, but to this point they are perfect, and we'll see if they can finish out the Pac-12 schedule undefeated this year. So again, that'll be Friday night, USC taking on Oregon at the Coliseum, a 5 p.m. kick on Fox, and very much looking forward to see how USC finishes out their Pac-12 season. So for Greg Katz, this is Erik McKinney. Thanks for watching WeAreSC.